Porsche might well have finally figured out how to bring us a hybrid version of its large Cayenne SUV that will tempt buyers away from diesel engines. The plug-in petrol-electric Cayenne SE Hybrid is good for 416 brake horsepower, features a much slicker hybrid drive system, and is priced identically to the Cayenne S Diesel. If you can afford one, then the idea of a 5-seat, 150-mile-an-hour Porsche that returns over 83 miles to the gallon, emits just 79 grams per kilometre of carbon dioxide, and can cover around 20 miles on electric power alone may be tempting indeed. This is a car like no other.
What on earth could be the environmental justification for running a 2.3-tonne, 416 brake horsepower, petrol-powered luxury SUV? Well, what if I told you its CO2 emissions could theoretically be cleaner than a Super Mini, and that in short-run day-to-day use you might never have to put any fuel in it? Interested? Then welcome to the Cayenne SE Hybrid. Its designers claim it to be one of the most efficient cars you can buy. Yes, really. You might find that difficult to credit, given that we're talking here of an enormous SUV powered by a supercharged 3-litre 6-cylinder petrol engine and capable of over 150 miles an hour. But it's just a question of adjusting your frame of reference. Consider this question from the point of view of how much horsepower you get from every gram of CO2 your car emits, and the results you'd expect are turned on their head. Well, an apparently eco-conscious car like Toyota's Prius Hybrid produces a combined petrol-electric output of 134 brake horsepower and emits 70 grams per kilometre of CO2. Now that's just 1.9 brake horsepower per gram kilometre. In contrast, this Cayenne, with 416 brake horsepower and emissions as low as 79 grams per kilometre, works its engine for an impressive 5.3 brake horsepower for every gram of carbon dioxide it emits. Oh, and did I mention, it's also 95% recyclable too. This really is a very different proposition from the original Cayenne S Hybrid, with its ancient nickel metal hydride battery, feeble electric motor and pathetically small electric-only driving range. Unlike its predecessor, this SE Hybrid version can be plugged into the mains and will go 5 times as far on electric-only power, while offering you far more spirited performance. Yet it promises to do all that with Super Mini-style running costs. As Porsche puts it, these are thrilling contradictions. Well, let's see if this car can deliver on its claims. Prior to the turn-of-the-century arrival of the original Cayenne and before it BMW's X5, the only thing that was green about large plush SUVs was the colour they turned their passengers when hustled along twisty country roads. Now, having proved it didn't have to be like that, both brands were then faced with the unenviable task of going the next step and finally making a 2.3-tonne SUV handle almost exactly like a luxury sports saloon. It's Porsche who've got the closest and have set the benchmark in this respect. Drive a powerful Cayenne on a racetrack, and it'll steer with a directness that no other SUV in this class can match, with an optional active anti-roll system on hand to make it corner-like one too. All that weight has to tell somewhere, of course, and you certainly feel it under braking. But by and large, like it or not, this car represents an astonishing engineering achievement, with an appropriately astonishing engine range. Plug-in petrol-electric hybrid technology is a key addition to this improved Cayenne lineup, enabling you to charge the car from the mains when you're not driving it. Essentially, the SE Hybrid model in question uses the same power plant that you'll find in Porsche's Panamera SE Hybrid luxury 5-door model, although here the German brand has had to boost the battery capacity from 24.5 amp hours to 28 amp hours in order to compensate for this big SUV's bluffer shape and extra weight. Otherwise, the technology is the same, and very impressive it is. The old non-plug-in Cayenne S Hybrid model's ancient nickel metal hydride battery has here been replaced with a high-tech lithium-ion unit with over 5 times the storage capacity. As a result, when you do set off, you'll have a decent electric-only operating range to play with. To be specific, you get somewhere between 11 and 22 miles, depending on speed and conditions, which is quite a step forward, given that the original version wouldn't go much more than a mile or so before the engine cut in. But this car isn't just about frugality. That battery boosts performance too, aided by a 95 brake horsepower electric motor that's over twice as powerful as before. What hasn't changed is the 330 brake horsepower Audi Source 3-litre supercharged V6 petrol engine it's paired with. The two working together to create a combined system power output of 416 brake horsepower, accessible via 4 selectable operating modes: e-power, hybrid, e-charge and sport. Now, unless the temperature's below freezing or you've forgotten to charge the car up, you'll always be starting off in electric-only e-power, in which near silent guise the car is capable of an impressive maximum speed of as much as 77 miles an hour. Now, when the battery range is used up, or you need to use the kickdown for rapid acceleration, the car will automatically switch to petrol-electric hybrid mode, a setting you might also want to switch to early if, for example, you want to save the battery charge for some city driving later on in your trip. Mind you, that may not be necessary, thanks to the clever e-charge option, which can charge that battery as you drive. Finally, there's the sport mode, which harnesses the power of the petrol engine with the full boost of the electric motor to spirit this 2.3-ton luxury SUV to 62 miles an hour in just 5.9 seconds en route to 151 miles an hour. Enough with engines. What more do you need to know? Well, for the full-fat Cayenne experience, you'll need to specify your car with the optional Sport Chrono pack that gives you launch control, or performance start, as Porsche likes to call it. The idea here is that, having previously forewarned the car of your intentions, you press your feet down on brake and throttle at the same time, and then, as the engine howls, come off the brake and wait a fraction of a second for all hell to break loose. At this point, you're thrust back in the seat and the car hurls itself at the horizon as if it's been fired from an AK-47. It's deeply silly, totally irresponsible, and you're going to love doing it. Whichever Cayenne you choose, if you're anything like us, one of the things you'll like most about it is the way that it makes you feel before you've even gone anywhere. Porsche proved with their 5-door Panamera that to create a sports car cockpit, you don't necessarily need a sports car, and so it is here. The driving position is just as good as a 911, which is saying something. No, scratch that, it's better, because of course you can see so much more thanks to this wonderful elevated driving position. Driving a rival model is almost bus-like by comparison. And through the turns, as I've already suggested, the surprises continue. Unlike Porsche's more modern designs, this car still sticks with the old-tech hydraulically assisted steering, but it's satisfyingly responsive, and probably better if you don't embellish it with the optional power steering plus speed responsive setup. If you happen to be familiar with the original first-generation Cayenne model, you'll find that this rack keeps you in much better touch with the road beneath your wheels. I can't decide whether it's this that makes the car so satisfying to drive, or the clever four-wheel drive system that sends 100% of the power to the rear unless the car senses any need for grip at the front end. Either way, I like it. Especially in tandem with the PTV Plus setup, a torque vectoring system that, when entering a corner at high speed, optimises steering response and precision by applying moderate brake pressure to the inside rear wheel, while at the same time transferring torque to the outside rear wheel, so supporting the steering motion of the car and improving its cornering dynamics. Unfortunately, PTV Plus, like so much else that Porsche has developed to improve the dynamics of this car, will cost you extra on most models, meaning that you'll need to specify your car carefully and expensively to get the best from it. Porsche Active Suspension Management, PASM, is an obvious example, an electronic damping control system that, via comfort, normal and sport options, allows you to adjust the ride to suit the road you're on and the mood you're in. Even more noticeable are the results that can be achieved from another optional system, PDCC, Porsche Dynamic Chassis Control. That's there to cut down the cornering body roll that would normally afflict this class of car. The setup uses high-tech anti-roll bars that respond to both steering input and lateral acceleration to produce a stabilising force that precisely negates the swaying movement of the body. You can only specify PDCC if you shell out for yet another option, air suspension, able to drop the car for greater stability at high speeds as well as raising it for off-road excursions. To be fair, we should point out that both air suspension and PDCC are standard on this SE hybrid model, which is some compensation for the fact that this variant lacks some of the off-road prowess that other Cayenne derivatives enjoy. With more conventionally engined versions of this car, you're offered the choice of 3 off-road modes. These work with PTM, Porsche traction management to change gearing, throttle response and ride height. 2 of the settings allowing you to lock the centre and rear differentials so that you can cope with all but the most extreme situations. Find yourself in one of those and you'll wish you ticked the box for extra cost underbody protection. You might also wish that this second generation Cayenne still had that weighty low range gearbox that featured on the Mark I model. But let's be real, you're never realistically going to need anything like that on such an expensive luxury SUV. In any case, this car doesn't need heavy-duty 4x4 mechanicals to give a good account of itself off-piste. Even on this SE hybrid model, the intelligent all-wheel drive system does a decent job of shuffling torque around to where it's needed. You get Porsche hill control to ease you down slippery slopes, and if you've specified air suspension, there's the option to raise the ride height as high as 268mm, so you can cruise across the fields. With steel springs, you'd be limited to 215mm. Air suspension improves angled off-road prowess too, and so equipped, even this Cayenne SE hybrid can boast an approach angle of 29.3 degrees, a departure angle of 26.2 degrees, a ramp breakover angle of 24.5 degrees, and a wading height of up to 555mm, which is nice to know. These days, this improved second-generation Cayenne is quite a smart-looking thing, but in the past, this car rarely has been. The Mark I model's attempt to graft a Porsche 911 front end onto Volkswagen Touareg underpinnings never sounded like a good idea, and it wasn't. Since then, to be frank, the designers have struggled with the task of integrating all-terrain toughness with the brand's trademark sports car style. Still, the original second-generation model showed the possibilities here, and this facelifted version takes its lead from the company's smaller Macan SUV in perfecting the possibilities of this design. You notice this most evidently here at the front end, where a redesigned bonnet features shut lines now pushed right out towards the restyled wings. Piercing bi-xenon headlamps incorporate 4-point LED daytime running lights, and below them lie Macan-style air fins that more effectively cool the enormous engine bay. The profile is less arresting, although the chrome detailing around the glass area is nice, and you can add in visual drama by specifying wheels of up to 21 inches in size. Inevitably here, the limiting factor lies with platform points this Porsche must share with its Volkswagen Touareg design stablemate. Move to the rear and more styling cues have been borrowed from the prettier Macan, most noticeably these restyled 3-dimensional LED tail lamps. The number plate recess, the boot handle and the lights are now integrated more elegantly into the tailgate, and potent-looking redesigned exhaust pipes have been integrated into the lower rear section. Not sure about the acid green-backed badges on this hybrid model though. Up front, you'll find yourself sat in what is arguably the nicest driving environment in the luxury SUV sector. Cocooning you 911 style into this brilliantly supportive multi-adjustable leather or Alcantara trimmed sports seat is a button-heavy lower console section with a bank of chrome-trimmed switches that run down the transmission tunnel and create the intended wraparound cockpit-like feel. It's anything but minimalist, but the ergonomics are difficult to fault once you adjust to the layout, and there's a huge range of adjustment to enable even the portliest people to get comfortable. The whole layout somehow combines a sports car style feel with great SUV-like raised visibility, and parking is aided by the way that the front wings are higher than the bonnet. If you've ticked the box for the optional Sport Chrono package, there's a lovely analog and digital stopwatch on top of the dash. Just below that area, in the centre of the fascia, lies the usual PCM, Porsche Communications Management Infotainment Screen that Porsche insists on making optional lower down the range, but which almost all owners choose. No, it isn't quite as intuitive as the latest systems from BMW and Mercedes, but you do at least get touchscreen functionality, and there are all the usual features you'd expect at this level, provided you pay more for them. Bluetooth, a DAB radio, navigation, all of it costs extra on most models, which seems a little mean given the money being asked here. One thing that fortunately is standard is this lovely 3-spoke leather-trimmed multifunction steering wheel, borrowed straight from Porsche's exotic 918 hybrid supercar. Behind it lie beautifully positioned paddle shifters for the Tiptronic 8-speed auto gearbox that all Cayenne models must have. And through the spokes, you view with a 5-dial instrument layout that'll be another recognisable touch to owners familiar with the original version of this model. The Rev Counter, as usual with this brand, assuming central pride of place. To its right, what you at first might assume to be a supplementary dial is actually a 4.8-inch colour screen which displays trip computer readouts, but more colourfully can also bring sat-nav mapping directly into your line of sight. The quality of the trim suits a car of this order too, with lovely leathers, perfect plastics and granite-like build quality that seems to have survived the combined Volkswagen-Porsche production process. Cayenne models are painted and initially put together alongside their Volkswagen Touareg counterparts in Bratislava, Slovakia, before final assembly takes place at Porsche's own plant in Leipzig in Germany. There's reasonable storage space too, with reasonable sizing for the door bins, the large refrigerated glove box and this central storage area. Plus you get handy drawers beneath the seats. There's no compartment for your sunglasses though, and this cubby in front of the gear lever is big enough only for coins or items you might previously have run over. One thing we do like though is that there's a proper car-shaped key to put in a proper car-shaped ignition slot. Time to move on to the back seat. It's now more comfortably supportive and can take up to 3 adults. As usual though, 2 would be more comfortable. Now this is thanks to a couple of things. First, that the centre transmission tunnel is usefully low. And second, that the rear seat base can slide backwards by up to 160mm to prioritise legroom if you're not using all the boot capacity. This backrest can also recline into 3 different positions for greater comfort on longer journeys. And there's the option of cooling seat ventilation and a rear entertainment system for buyers really wanting to pamper their rear passengers. And out back, well, raising the now electrically operated tailgate reveals a boot that's one of the very largest in the class. The 670-litre capacity giving you a massive 181 litres more space than you find in a comparable Range Rover Sport, and more surprisingly, 90 litres more capacity than you get in a Volkswagen Touareg. In fact, there's so much room here that you wonder why Porsche doesn't offer an optional third-row pair of fold-out chairs. Evidently, though, MPV-ness is still a step too far for the brand just at present. Expect that to change in the future. All of the comments I've just made apply to conventionally engined Cayenne models that all offer extra room beneath the boot floor. This SE hybrid version, as you can see, doesn't have that. All those batteries have got to go in somewhere. Hence a reduction in luggage capacity to 580 litres with this variant. Should you need more room, then across the range the rear backrest is split 40-20-40, so that if necessary you can push through long items like skis between 2 rear-seated occupants. If you specified air suspension, you can also more easily take really heavy items too, courtesy of this useful cargo wall button that can lower down the loading lip by 48mm. Completely flattening the rear bench, a process that as an option can be electrically powered, frees up as much as 1,780 litres of fresh air in a conventional Cayenne model, or 1,690 litres in this SE hybrid variant. Either way, it's more than you get from a large executive segment estate like BMW's 5 Series Touring or Audi's A6 Avant. Asking figures for Cayenne ownership sit mainly in the £50,000 to £62,000 bracket. That entry-level figure enough to buy you the base petrol or diesel 3-litre V6 variants. At the top of that price bracket, you have a choice in performance-minded frugality with the 385 brake horsepower S diesel model and this 416 brake horsepower SE hybrid petrol-electric variant, which are almost identically priced. It all comes down to just how green-minded you want to be. As for specific rivals to this Cayenne SE hybrid model, well, you could save yourself £10,000 to £15,000 and opt for a BMW X540e or a Lexus RX, but both cars deliver less performance. For the same kind of money as this petrol-electric Cayenne, you could get yourself an Audi Q7 e-tron or a Volvo XC90 T8, but neither will feel anything like as sharp to drive. A closer rival, we think, is Mercedes GLE 500e, but that car is around £3,000 more expensive and not quite as frugal or clean. If, having considered all of this, you conclude that it is a Cayenne that you really want, then you're going to need to know just how generous Porsche has been with the standard spec. Now, analyse that, and it's clear that a few compromises have been made to keep this car looking relatively affordable in its segment. It is, after all, very surprising to have to find more money for items like Bluetooth and a DAB radio on a car of this price. Most rivals also offer standard features like leather trim, metallic paint, seat heating and satellite navigation, all of which come at extra cost on this Porsche. The navigation setup is included as part of the Porsche Communication Management Infotainment System, and that's only standard on the top turbo variants, and which your car will really have to have, if only to preserve its resale value. To be fair, this revised second-generation Cayenne model is a little better specified than its predecessor. A power-operated tailgate, for example, joins a kit list that runs to alloy wheels of at least 18 inches in size, dual-like daytime running lights, front fog lamps and an alarm, as well as the 8-speed Tiptronic S auto gearbox that all the variants must have. Inside, front seat passengers get comfort seats with 8-way electrical adjustment, 2-zone climate control, branded sill plates, a multifunction leather-stitched sports steering wheel with gear shift paddles, cruise control and a CDR audio system accessible via a 7-inch touchscreen display. With this SE hybrid model, there's a Porsche universal charger that you'll need to charge your battery. Now, if you're a typical Cayenne buyer, you're going to want to go further than that, and in doing so, we suggest that you really need to start by considering the various key dynamic options. You'll have to pay more for the adaptive air suspension that we're trying here, and that's something you'll certainly need if you opt for larger 19, 20 or even 21-inch wheels that'll give you a much firmer ride. That system works in conjunction with the PASM, Porsche Active Suspension Management Electronic Damping Control setup. PASM offers normal, sport and sport plus settings to vary the ride from cosseting to clinically precise. Going further means adding PDCC, Porsche Dynamic Chassis Control, to limit cornering roll and get yourself an electronically regulated rear differential lock for extra rear wheel traction. Further red mist motoring can be encouraged with the optional Sport Chrono package that gives even sportier tuning of the engine and chassis setup, along with quicker gearbox shift times and an F1-style launch control. Porsche calls it Performance Start for quick getaways. Go for this, and you'll also want the Porsche Torque Vectoring Plus system that works through the twisty stuff to counter both understeer and wheel spin by lightly micro-braking whichever front wheel is threatening to lose grip. You might also want to look at sports tailpipes, a raughty sports exhaust system, and the speed-sensitive Power Steering Plus system that lightens the steering when you're parking but firms it up at higher speeds. In the unlikely event that you'll be regularly taking your Cayenne off-road, there's an optional off-road technology pack that adds greater underbody protection. If, having got all of that sorted out, you've still money left in your budget, then you can start to look at a few niceties. Maybe a sunroof, or even better, the full panoramic roof that floods the cabin with light. Your passengers will appreciate wider-reaching 4-zone climate control, privacy glass, electric sunscreens for the rear side windows and rear seat entertainment screens, while an auxiliary heating system can be set to warm or cool the car prior to your arrival in it. We'd want to look at the upgraded sound systems too. Either the 14-speaker 585-watt Bose package, or even better, the 16-speaker 1,000-watt Burmester high-end setup. Either of these can be mated to a 6-disc DVD changer, a TV tuner, voice control and wireless internet access. Other options you could consider include soft closed doors, a telephone module, the Porsche entry and drive keyless entry system, a compass display on the fascia and heating for the seats, the steering wheel and the windscreen. Practical touches include a retractable tow bar, a fitted ski bag, roof rails and a load space management system so you can compartmentalise the cargo area. Oh, and one clever extra feature you won't want to be without is the PCC Porsche Car Connect smartphone app. It works with both Apple and Android devices, and it allows you to control certain functions of your vehicle via your smartphone. Amongst other functions, this PCC system can be used to call up vehicle data and display your car's position. It can even allow you to unlock your car from anywhere in the world. PCC can also work with the PVTS Porsche Vehicle Tracking System to help recover your vehicle should it be stolen. With this SE hybrid model, this app can also be used to pre-cool or preheat the car for you. And if you're choosing this petrol-electric variant, then you'll want to look at the increased capacity 7.2 kilowatt onboard charger that'll halve your charging times. And maybe also the Porsche charging dock that allows the charging cable to be stored neatly alongside the Porsche universal charger and mounted in your garage wall. On to aesthetics. Now for the outside, I've talked about the bigger wheels you can have, and you can also add running boards, stainless steel front and rear skid plates, wheel arch extensions, an exclusive sport design package, and choose from a range of special colours. You'll want to get the interior aesthetics right too. Will you want sports seats, and do they need memory adjustment, heating and ventilation? You'd probably like them trimmed in leather, and this material can also be extended around the dash and the steering column if you wish. That leather can have a two-tone finish and feature embossed Porsche crests for extra exclusivity too. Those who like to feature wood trim in their interiors can have it here in birch, mahogany or walnut, while those who don't can go for a carbon fibre or brushed aluminium finish. You can have a roof lining in Alcantara. And if you want something even more bespoke, then you'll be able to order it through the Porsche exclusive program. Whatever your final trim choice, don't forget to set it all off with the Comfort Lighting package, which bathes the whole interior in a delicious LED nighttime glow. On to optional driving features that'll make your progress easier and safer. On mainstream models, you have to pay extra for the PDLS Porsche Dynamic Light System that turns as you do to illuminate each corner. There's a speed limit display that pictures road signs for you as you pass and displays them on the dash. Plus, you could specify an online services option that gives you real-time traffic information. In addition, the adaptive cruise control with the Porsche Active Safe system would be good to have. This set up using a radar to speed or slow your car with the traffic. If necessary, right down to 0 and then up to speed again. Parking would be made easier if you had a reversing camera with functions to help hitch up a trailer, or even better, there's a surround view monitor which uses 4 cameras, give you an all-round picture of your car and its immediate surroundings. As for long journey peace of mind, there's a lane change assist option that stops you from dangerously pulling out to overtake in front of another car, and a lane assist feature that stops dozy drivers from veering out of their lanes on the highway. These options suggest that safety is a Porsche priority, but of course, ultimately, that depends on the person behind the wheel, which is why all buyers get a course at the Porsche Experience Centre at Silverstone to hone their skills. That'd be a good opportunity to see just what a difference the expensive but very desirable extra cost PCCB Porsche ceramic composite brakes make to your stopping power. And to understand how best to use the almost endless selection of electronic driver aids that the brand provides to keep all of this car's power in check. These include the usual braking and traction assistance and the best stability control system in the business. If all else fails and you can't avoid an accident, twin front, side and curtain airbags will spring to your aid, with rear side bags being optional. You also get an award-winning multi-collision brake system that'll automatically brake the car after a crash to reduce your chances of the vehicle going on and hitting something else. Plus, there are ISOFIX child seat fastenings, along with tyre pressure monitoring, a pedestrian-friendly bonnet, and a hill holder clutch to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions. To really change efficiency perceptions in this corner of the market, you need a real step forward in technology, and this Cayenne SE hybrid model claims to provide just that. New European driving cycle stats, which are rarely a very accurate real-world guide, suggest it to be capable of an astonishing 83.1 miles per gallon combined cycle figure, an improvement of nearly 200% on the original hybrid model. And there's an equally impressive CO2 reading of 79 grams per kilometre, enough to officially classify it as an ultra-low emissions vehicle, although annoyingly not quite enough to entitle exemption from the London congestion charge. Of course, much depends on how, where and when you drive. After all, if, like many people, your daily journey to work occupies a round trip of less than 10 miles, then your weekly business commute in an SE hybrid could end up being completely fuel-free, given this car's ability to travel between 11 and 22 miles, depending on how you drive, on electric power alone. If, on the other hand, you venture further afield in this car and drive in a reasonably spirited manner, our own experience suggests that it won't be any cheaper to run than the far less expensive diesel Cayenne model, especially once you've factored in the cost of the electricity you'll be using to charge this car up, a process that occupies around 2.5 hours when connected to a 16-amp industrial outlet, or just under 4 hours if you plug it into a normal 10-amp household socket. There are different cables for each. You can halve those charging times if you fit an extra cost 7.2 kilowatt onboard charger to replace a standard fit 3.6 kilowatt item, or juice your Cayenne up even quicker if you're lucky enough to find a 32 amp outlet. Many Porsche centres have one. And you can remotely set your charging times to take advantage of cheaper off-peak tariffs. What can be guaranteed are the tax benefits that come with SE hybrid motoring. That low CO2 reading means company car tax liability of only 5% and a 100% first-year allowance. So you'll pay less in this respect to run one of these than you would for something like a BMW 320d. You won't have to pay annual road tax either. We're also assuming that likely buyers will fully maximise all the efficiency opportunities this car can offer, and there's certainly every chance to do so. As you'd expect, dash readouts tell you your battery charge status, along with all-electric and hybrid driving range figures, plus fuel consumption and zero emissions mileage figures. Best of all, there's a neat infotainment screen graphic that allows you to see what's been driven by what at any given moment in time. Owners will also want to download the clever PCC Porsche Car Connect smartphone app that gives you information on remaining charging time, battery charge status, and a visual depiction of the electric range. You can also use this app to set the charge timer with customizable charging times. Plus, you can preheat or pre-cool the car prior to your journey. And you can use Porsche Car Connect to summon breakdown help, check the status of your car's alarm, and even guide you back to your Cayenne if you've forgotten where you've parked it. What else? Well, though the 3-year warranty is unremarkable, the bulletproof build quality suggests that you're unlikely to need it. Residual values will be strong. Experts predict about 57% of original purchase price back after the usual typical 3-year ownership period. Insurance is grouped 45E for this SE hybrid variant. You won't be buying any £65,000 SUV on economic grounds, least of all this one. If you simply want a more cost-effective way to run a Cayenne, then the diesel version provides it for around 20% less money. That variant can't match this SE hybrid model's performance though, its exemplary refinement or its high-tech appeal. In other countries, notably the US market this car is primarily designed for, these are nice-to-have advantages to group alongside this model's main selling point, the substantial tax breaks available to customers opting for hybrid power. Those aren't, yet, quite as attractive here, which will inevitably limit this car's appeal. but it remains a devastatingly effective statement of its brand's technological know-how, a glimpse into the future of just how efficient, powerful luxury SUVs can be, Porsche style.